The purpose of tonight's hearing is to provide an opportunity for the board, and for myself and Dave, to hear input from the public about Charter Hill's solar petition. The comments received tonight will be part of the public record in this docket. The public comments don't become part of the formal evidence in the case, but the comments do help raise new issues or perspectives that the board should consider in making a determination in the case. This is also not the only opportunity for people to make comments or submit input. You can submit a written filing, you can email information to the clerk. There is also a handout over here that provides some information about the hearing and gives you contact information and stuff like that if you wanted to submit a written comment. The public hearing tonight is being transcribed by a court reporter. The transcript, along with all the comments received, become part of the case's public files, so we have them on record and can review them as we consider the case. Before we get started, I know the petitioner has had a couple events. Do people want to have the petitioner do a brief overview of the project? Do people feel fairly familiar with it? Is there a sense of folks on whether that'd be useful or strong opinions here?
I'd like to have a brief overview first.
Sure. So, I don't know, Leslie, if you want to just give a quick or...
Well, why don't I introduce, just in case for a few people who might not know who we are. My name is Leslie Cadwell. I'm an attorney with the developer Green Lantern Capital that's developing the project. Luke Schellenberger is here from Green Lantern, and he will give you an overview of the project because I think it's more important for you to hear from the developer than from the developer's lawyer.
Schellenberger. I'm one of the partners in Green Lantern Capital. We are a firm based out of Waterbury, Vermont. We do project development and project finance. We've worked across a fairly broad spectrum of clean energy technologies. So currently, our principal focus is on solar. This project here is one of the projects that we're developing and financing in Vermont. This is a 1 megawatt AC solar array located on land that we have leased from a local Rutland family. E&K Asset Management is the group that owns the land. They are local Rutland folks. We've entered into a long-term land lease with them. I've worked collaboratively with them to create a concept for this project. It's located at the end of Grandview Terrace on land that was pretty heavily damaged in the Noricane event of 2007, I believe. Some significant damage, a bunch of trees that went down, they cleared the land. They were considering other development proposals and other development options for this land, among which was a high-density 24-unit planned unit development. And together we decided that the highest and best use for this parcel might be solar. GMP was initiating its Solar Capital Vermont initiative, and we came up with a concept for this project. 1 megawatts, largely on land that has already been cleared. A little bit of tree cutting around some of the margins. We have engaged a civil engineering team from Krebs and Lansing, environmental consultant Arrowwood Environmental, and aesthetics consultants TJ Boyle to conduct studies on the parcel. What else can I offer? That's a good overview.
Great, thank you. Why don't we next give the Department of Public Service?
My name is Megan Ludwig, and I'm an attorney with the Department of Public Service. We're the public advocate in these proceedings, and we evaluate the project against the general good of the state, looking at all of the criteria listed in Section 248, under which it would be permitted. So I'm available to be contacted about general public concerns. Sorry, I don't have a card with me, but my email is on the department's website, which is linked
Thanks. So why don't we go ahead and get started? If anyone who wants to speak hasn't signed the sign-up sheet, that would be very helpful. We'll just go down in order on that. Great. Anyone else who wanted to get on here while we're... So if you can just state your name clearly. It looks like all of you have excellent handwriting, so I won't make you spell your name for the clerk. Or for the court reporter, excuse me. So let's see, we have Jack Arthur.
Right here. And do I even have to stand up in this intimate group?
You can stand up if you still feel like it.
Okay, I'm a resident of 1 Rachel Drive, and I am not an adjoining landowner. However, I guess you could say a short stone's throw, not even at the end of that arm. And I have several concerns about the project. And number one, I made my own notes here, is the placement of the project. And my question is, and it isn't really a question, there must be a better place in Rutland for this project. This project is presently slated for a field between 3 residential neighborhoods. The field slopes down to the northwest to the watershed of Moon Brook. Now, the brook is currently listed as a stormwater impaired waterway and has been the center of state and EPA discussions. The city has estimated the cost to remediate this could run as high as $45 million, and that would be to the taxpayers' problem. There's got to be a better place to put it. This seems to me like it will only exacerbate the problem. My second point is the aesthetics of the project. There's been some miscommunication or a lack of it by the developer in terms of how the project's to look. There's been no architectural rendering offered to us, and I attended the last 2 meetings, and in both meetings there were concerns of adjoining landowners in terms of hedges, setbacks, how is this going to look. And I would have to use the word evasive for the developer in terms of taking a clear a stance on it. And the landowners are not here tonight, but I think they probably agree with me. The developer actually asked the landowners if they would sketch out what the shrubbery should look like around this fence and submit it to them. And my point on that is that's placing the burden of what the project should look like upon landowners. And my third one, this is my pet peeve, is the presentation of this project. And not being an adjoining landowner, I was not notified. I had no knowledge. And I'm going to bet a lot of people within just a few feet of me, my neighbors, other than if I hadn't told them about the project, they had no idea. So I blame the city of Rutland. I blame the developer. I think this is a stealth mode. I think this is not the way you want to run any project. I think before this started, I was probably a solar advocate, but not so much anymore, because I think the lack of transparency on this really shows up. That's it.
Thank you. Eric Lapp is the next person.
Thank you for the opportunity to provide input. My comments will be a few brief paragraphs, a copy of which I'm submitting tonight, along with a couple of illustrations and a copy of a great guideline for the way industrial solar farms should be developed locally. I am an adjoining landowner to the proposed project, a registered voter, city, state, and federal taxpayer, GMP ratepayer, resident of 4 Rachel Drive since 1998, Rutland County since 1989, and Vermont since 1965. I hold a Master of Science in Geology from UVM, an undergraduate degree in Geology and Environmental Science. In the past, I've worked in hydrogeology and soils testing for one of the most prominent consulting companies hired by developers of Vermont projects. I also served the state of Vermont as the primary Act 250 application reviewer in the Water Quality Division of A&R DEC. But my comments are my own and specific to this project. A sprawling 1 megawatt industrial power generation facility of 259 connected ground-mounted racks installed on a significantly sloping site underlain by poorly permeable compact glacial till soils, overlying wetland and wetland buffer zones in an area zoned for single-family residences does not belong in the middle of 4 neighborhoods of Rutland City and Rutland Town. It is possible that a much smaller project, better planned, designed, studied, and properly reviewed, with far fewer environmental, aesthetic, and other impacts, could work at a future time. As proposed, it is an unorderly, haphazard development proposal at best. The single largest physical property impact will be its effects on surface and subsurface water flows in the wetlands. 20 parallel rows, averaging 13 panels per row, closely spaced, all fixed, tilted slightly to the south, and sloping significantly downhill to the west, will create channelized, higher velocity stormwater flows, draining more quickly into the wetlands and neighboring properties downslope. This proposed parking lot of impervious solar panels appears to cover 2 acres of the 4.6 acre project. The project as proposed is too big and will not fit the specific site and hydrologic environment in which it would be located. I have very carefully studied just a few sections of the developer's consultant's promotional submissions to the docket. My neighbors and I have intently listened to 2 presentations held at the expense of nice new Green Mountain Power Energy Information Center. I suspect no member of Rutland City Government, Regional Commission, or any understaffed state-level authority has or will look closely at the full environmental impacts of the project, let alone the full story on economic and energy costs or benefit to the public taxpayer, particularly the 1 to 2 dozen adjoining property owners. The board should proceed slowly and carefully on the remaining schedule for this proposal with a very thorough and careful review and questioning of all of the developer's experts and related regulatory bodies, including addressing any issues related to Moonbrook, its drainage basin, and combination pond. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Hart.
You mean?
My name is Jennifer Hart. I live on 2 Rachel Drive, and I'm one of the adjoining properties. When I first saw the proposal, I thought, oh my goodness, it's going right in my backyard. And I was appalled when I bought my home back in 1992. One of the reasons for buying it was because I had woods in my backyard, and I knew that there was a power line there. I knew I was safe for any kind of development of anything, any sort. I then went to some of the meetings, and I found out that the proposed area isn't exactly behind my home. It's close, but it's not right behind my home. I'd also like to mention that I am a proponent of solar. I think solar is wonderful. I've considered putting solar on my home. I'm very serious about that. However, I was upset thinking I was going to be overlooking a solar array in my nice residential area. Bought my home for where it's located. And being a person who cares about others, I think it's important that I worry about everyone who does have the solar array in their backyard or in their side yard. The people at the end of Grandview, I know have, that's who Jack was talking about before. They were saying, come up with some design. Or they're still having a giant gate that you can't be covering with any shrubbery, because there has to be a gate. So they're still going to be able to look out their window and see the array. And then all the poor folk on West Ridge who are going to have to look out their windows for their beautiful western exposure where they bought their home are now going to be looking out and seeing a solar array. Yeah, sure, it's a solar array. It's not what the mountains are that they bought their home to be looking at. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joanne and David Fair, I assume only one of you is, or if both of you want, that's fine, we'll just take one at a time.
I don't have anything written. My name is David Fair, by the way. I live on 2 Ridgewood Lane, which is at the top of Combination Pond. It's a dead-end street, and there's maybe 100 yards, 150 yards between my house and the Grandview Terrace open area where this is proposed to be. I guess my biggest concern when I read is property values may go down. What has it been now, 6 years since the crash? Well, I lost, where I figure somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 in property value. If I take another hit, I can't sell the house for what I bought it for. That's pretty much my biggest concern.
And the water. If you drive down that street today, you will see the water just running right down the side of our house into the street. It's like a stream right now.
Okay, thank you. Debbie Kelly?
Yes. Hi, I live on Rachel Drive, just southwest of the proposed project, and I wanted to address a couple issues tonight regarding zoning and property values. I wanted to point out that the property that the solar farm is proposed to go on is single-family residential zoning. It's not multifamily zoning, it's not senior housing zoning, it's single-family residential housing, and it has been that way for many years. At last week's solar hearing for the Cold River Road project, the theme promoted specifically that that project was zoned commercial. That is most definitely not the case here, as you've heard. To the west is Brentwood Drive and Ridgewood Drive. To the south is Rachel Drive and Grandview Terrace, and to the east is Westridge Terrace, which literally overlooks all the solar panels. You've heard a little bit about that, but just by the nature of the terrain, they literally are going to be looking down on that. And I have some pictures which I can give you to support that. Anyways, this is a project that would put an investment property smack in the middle of these multiple neighborhoods. For years, the state of Vermont has been governed by Act 250 in terms of buildings, building signs, sprawl, etc., to protect from just this sort of project. While I realize that you as the Public Service Board have been granted full authorization to override zoning, and I understand that, it just seems very wrong in this case. Putting solar panel converts this property to a money-making commercial property, one that does not belong nestled among multiple neighborhoods. I'd like to applaud Rutland Town for looking at establishing protocols for solar farms. And I was very dismayed to see Rutland Planning Commission sign off on this residential neighborhood project so rapidly. While most of us do want solar power, we recognize that solar farms belong in commercial settings. Allen Street by the hospital, the old dump off Gleason Road, Route 4, Route 7. In looking at the public impact, the gentleman reported that there's visibility for passersby for 1.2 seconds on Westridge Terrace, but gave no impact for the people that live there 24/7. I couldn't understand why he didn't take that into account until I realized, because he's not used to taking this into account. Solar farms are not put in the middle of residential neighborhoods. 239 panels do not belong for the public good here. The investors in these projects would like us to believe there's no evidence of decreased property values next to these solar farms. I believe that could be the case where solar farms are in commercially zoned areas. It makes sense that if you're in an area that's zoned for commercial properties, then a solar farm investment would not affect the neighboring business value. Similarly, a solar farm on a remote agricultural farmland is where there's no neighbors that are going to be affected by the site or the construction would suffer little diminished property value. However, in a residential setting, a solar farm most definitely affects property values. For instance, if my house was for sale and there was a similar neighborhood that had a house for sale, my guess is a purchaser would most likely pick the property that had a private wooded backyard and not one that has 239 panels in the back of it. And that, in and of itself, is going to lower our property value. So we're going to have to sell our house for less money because we have this solar farm in our backyard versus having the woods and the fields that we have now. And even if they put residential neighborhood in there, at least it's a neighborhood setting and not a commercial investment property. Regarding the project being for the good of the people, I don't believe the placement of a 239-panel farm in a residential neighborhood is for the good of the people. Is there solar that could go back to the grid? Sure there is. But at what expense to those that have paid taxes and reside in these quiet neighborhoods? I'm certain there are more industrial areas to erect these panels in order to allow Rutland to become the solar capital of New England, but still keep the integrity of our Vermont residential neighborhoods. And one more thing that was said last week at the Public Service Board has so far supposedly not turned down a single residential or single solar project to date. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what was said. And I feel strongly that this should be the one where we draw the line. A line that shows clearly that not every landowner can put up an investment solar project, and especially not in the midst of residential neighborhoods. Thank you.
Mary Ryan?
Many of the things that I was thinking about or thinking about to say have been said very well, very eloquently. I would like to say I have lived on Grandview Terrace for 38 years, purchased our property because of the residential setting, and with maps at that time showed a road for possible development right through where the solar farm is now, connecting with Irving Heights. We were very much assured that we would not have any issues to be concerned about in terms of property values. We bought our land. All the members of our family put in their blood, sweat, and tears building this property with the hopes even one day of getting some return on our investment and on our life's work. This appears to be an issue that may not happen, having a commercial enterprise in a residential neighborhood. I would like to add also that I am one house removed from where the solar farm is going to be. I have heard nothing about this until one of my neighbors informed me of it. I think that's very delinquent on the parts of the developers, and I'm not sure how many others of my neighbors close nearby this solar farm to be know about it as well. Thank you.
John Kiernan?
Yes. I am a city representative. I am an alderman for the city, and when I was approached about this, unfortunately I knew nothing about it, and upon my research I found that I can do nothing about it, and that's why I knew nothing about it. I was told that municipal zoning does not make a difference. Basically in regards to solar, it can go where it wants. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry, but basically I was told that it didn't make a difference. It can go wherever it wants to. I understand that there are things in play that are going to affect the city. Property value is going to affect our grand list. In regards to personal property taxes, those are being adjusted, so the city will end up with less revenue from that. I'm particularly interested in the Moonbrook watershed issue because of the value of that. To say that the land was damaged because of an hurricane is incorrect. The trees are damaged. There's nothing wrong with the land. I still hold that this property would and should be used for a better use. So I would say that I am very much against that. Thank you.
Thank you. Donald Howe?
Yeah. I'm a direct abutter to this. I'm 277 West Ridge Terrace. Looking up off my deck, and that's what I see. Before they cleared that land, it was beautiful woods, and then they cleared it. They were going to build some houses. That never happened. When that microburst and hurricane came through, my property was directly affected by it. As was my neighbor. We had some trees come down. It was like a 300-yard wide thing. It did not affect that piece of property except for a couple of trees coming down in one little corner. They went through, so that's really not affected. The lot across the street from me still has broken trees from it. It's still right now, I'm looking at what, an 8-foot high fence or something like that. There's a row of trees there now in the back of my property. I'm up in town, right? And I'm assuming those trees are all going to come out, in which case I'm looking at an ugly fence and 200 some odd solar panels. not against solar energy at all. You know, the benefit, the cost benefit of this is certainly to private industry. It's not to the citizens of the county. It's to Rutland town. And it's going to be an eyesore for me. It's definitely going to affect my property value. It's bad enough that I've got tower lines to look at now and this to worry about. I don't know if I'll ever be able to sell my house if this goes in. Not that I'm looking to sell my house. I've been there since 2000. But we've got a nice piece of property, and this is going to be an eyesore, even if I have to look at a big fence.
Thanks. Larry Meyer?
Yes, my name is Larry Meyer. I live on 301 Westridge Terrace. Actually, my neighbor is Don. About a bunch of pictures. Looking out on my deck looks directly down. They're going to be right directly behind my house. You know, it's a beautiful view out towards the West Mountains, West Rutland. Sunsets, you know, it's a nice area. I built a house 24 years ago. I don't plan on leaving. You know, how much glare is going to come from there, from the sunsets coming up there? I don't know. How much? I'm sure, like other people have mentioned, the property value will change. Mine and Don's directly because it's right behind our house. The length, I mean, you put an 8-foot fence up, how high are these things off the ground? 6 foot? 10? Well, I mean, my deck's up 16 feet, you got an 8-foot fence, and you got a 10-foot fence. Don't tell me the fence is going to cover the, I mean, it's just a straight line. You're going to see it all the time. It's just going to be pretty ugly. You know, my kids, my grandkids, I think solar's great. I have no problem with it at all. I see no dollar value to me, only a negative value to property. I agree with solar. You know, I think it's great. It's been done all around. And in the right place, I think it's fantastic. You know, I don't really know, like where Gleason Road, the dump, where that's going in. That's a perfect place for it. I mean, down behind MSJ ball field, way out in the cornfields. Can anybody see it? Who knows? You know, down behind Rutland City sewage treatment plant, nobody sees it. You know, West Street behind Casella's waste zero sort cycle. Yeah. Nobody could see that because they couldn't see it from Clement Road. You know, there's got to be one, especially if it's not zone residential. Why should we even be considering it? Because those zoning rules were put in there not to be changed. When I built my house, I had to have a certain square footage in my area. Those were the covenants. And that can't change today. And I don't think this should change. Definitely not for it at all. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the end of the list. Was there anyone else who wanted to make a comment? All right. Well, I appreciate everyone coming down. I really appreciate your guys' comments and concerns. A lot of really thoughtful comments. And thank you all for being here. And with that, we're adjourned.
What is the process from here? Can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. Essentially there's the parties, which at this point are the department, the agency, National Resources, and the petitioner. They will go through they'll go through the legal process. They'll conduct discovery, which essentially means asking questions, getting information back from them. Depending on what happens, at some point there will be a technical hearing, which is essentially where formal evidence is presented, and then at some point after that, what will happen is I will write what is a recommendation for the board, and then the board may or may not take my recommendations based on the criteria that are laid out in the statute, whether or not the board should approve the project.
Okay. And you mentioned in this letter, it mentions that we can email and submit some things with email. I figured I
So,
could email
yeah,
those
so
pictures.
you can definitely submit the sheet that sort of overview, the brief overview of things, has the contact information of the clerk's office, so you can submit written comments that way, and that's always great.
And when would you like those by?
There's not a solid deadline at this point. This formal schedule for the case hasn't been fully established, so we don't, before the hearing is the most work time, but that won't be for, at least several weeks, not more than that. So it's, I suppose sooner is generally better. It gives more opportunity.
So the April 10th deadline is not in effect?
The April 10th deadline is the deadline for motions to intervene. That's if you actually want to become a party to the case. So that means being one of the, people who are actually in the hearing, that you have the responsibilities of being a party. You have to abide by the rules of evidence, those sorts, the rules of civil procedure, et cetera. But you can submit public comments at any point.
There's going to be a site walkthrough for the board. Is that open to the public or not?
Yeah, the public is generally welcome to come along with us. It's somewhat, I don't know if the developer is comfortable with that.
Absolutely, and in fact, I have the adjoining landowner list. We're required by the Public Service Board rules to gather adjoining landowners based on the criteria. And I'm happy to send the notice of a site visit out to that list. I can post it again to Box, so folks can share that with the folks that are not adjoiners, and so don't have the same entitlement to notice that adjoining landowners do, so that you can attend the site visit.
What is
And you have that on the record, right?
We've gone on.
Okay. I would like to acknowledge on the record that I have offered
Sure.
to.
Okay, well, hold on, so we're going back on
We
that.
can go back on the
That's
record.
fine, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't mind being held accountable to that.
Could I ask, can you explain the site visit? What that is?
Sure. So typically in these processes, it usually happens in the afternoon of the public hearing. There's a walk around the site, actually, to show the hearing officer, where it is, because they're all in Montpelier. They don't live necessarily, around the state. So part of the process is an opportunity for the hearing officer to actually put eyes on the site and ask questions. It's not evidence, just like the public hearing, but it gives them an opportunity to see. And I'll speak for you. I don't do your job, but I'm going to speak for you in this. It gives them an opportunity to think about questions, to ask the proponent of the project as part of the board has their own ability to do discovery. Just like parties do, the hearing officer can ask questions that usually based, in my experience, on public comments like this. He'll take the information he gets from you here or the site visit and ask us to respond. So it's an opportunity to actually see the site, point out where things are going to be, and that kind of. So that's the site.
Come and stand on our deck and look at the site over there?
If you invited folks to do that, absolutely, we could do that. Now the Vermont, the aesthetics test in Vermont that's applied both in Act 250 and the Public Service Board proceedings doesn't take into account the view from your personal deck, but that's something I know you'd be very happy to go look at your deck, especially at sunset. The reason the site visit was not scheduled for this afternoon was because we wanted people to actually be able to walk on the site without tracing through snow and actually see it. Exactly. So it hasn't been scheduled yet.
Yeah, and there are also a number of, Agency of Natural Resources isn't here, but in our discussions with the agency, there are a number of natural resources issues that they wanted to be able to see that we
So you can't see with snow on the ground.
And I also wanted to add that through the process of this case, the Department of Public Service asks discovery questions, and many of those questions are informed by what we hear at the public hearing and at the site visit. So we'll certainly keep those issues in mind, and that's where we're asking questions.
Okay. Why don't we jump back on the record? So we're back on the record briefly to note the fact that the petitioner has offered to invite both the adjoining landowners and other people who are interested to the site visit, which has not been officially scheduled yet, but the petitioner has offered to, when it is scheduled, get that information around to people, and people who are interested can come and take a look at that point.
So may I ask how many adjoining landowners there are?
Yes. If I can actually get my laptop open, here we go. Okay. Give me 1 second. Is, 1, 2, 3, 8. I think I counted 28 addresses.
And that means they're exactly next to the property?
Yep, so they have to share a property line. And if it's divided by a road or a railroad, a stream, a water body, something like that, you actually have to look at where the property would adjoin had that road or stream or something not intervened. So there are folks who are close to the project but are not actually touching it, the property boundary, and they are not entitled to notice by law.
Very strange.
92 Ridgewood Lane, and that's adjoining. It's right now back there.
Into the fair.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
And what is that going to look like?
Right
now,
there are
there's
no
woods.
trees, as I understand, I looked as you made your comments, I looked at the map. It's my understanding that area, there's going to be no tree planting there.
How about between, on West Ridge Terrace, will all those trees going to be cleared?
No, actually, up on the, there's
Along
going to
that-
be, there's
right
not,
there, along that border.
there's going to be, isn't some of this restricted?
That's it, this is where, this is right here where I am.
Yep.
There's a row of trees right here. Those trees are gonna be cleared, if they're gonna stay, then I'll have a problem.
You know, this is clear. This is
That's all
clear,
clear.
right? This is clear, but here is not.
Right.
Where there's no gray. No, we can't clear, we can't guarantee that local or DMV not.
No, they would have cleared it by now, they've already come through and cleared as much, all the trees are gonna clear. But in the summertime, I may not see that in the summertime, but in the wintertime, I can see that perfectly clear, that whole block. But if those trees are all gonna be cleared, then.
What would be I mean, if we're going to, looking to put going to be putting all these solar panels in. My question is, like, logistically, how much money is it costing to put the solar panels in? How long is the longevity of the panel itself? How much profit is it going to bring to the investors? And is it worth the investors to have other people very upset with this? I mean, is there a
Well,
huge
they
profit in
make
this?
money out of it. Here,
Well, yeah, I mean,
I can't answer that. I don't know if the developer is comfortable talking about that, but it's, some of those things may come up in this case, but this one, I don't have the answers to these.
does the power go right to Rutland around the town, or does it get shipped out? I don't know how it works.
The power goes to GMP, goes into the grid. And the electrons don't know where they are.
Right. I understand.
They flow over it.
One last comment. What I like.
Did you want to make a comment on the record?
It'd be on record, sure. Right. And it's regarding something with Myers, as far as the whole cost, I'm sorry.
Did you already?
My name's Don Lau, 277 West Ridge Terrace. And as far as the cost benefit of this, the power's going to be sold back to the grid. And someone's going to make money on this. Green Mountain Power's probably not going to make a lot of money on it. And I look at it as somebody's making money on the expense of the abutting landowners. So we're gonna lose money as far as property value, potentially, I don't know if that's true or not, but potentially could lose value on our property, so someone else can put money in their pocket. And I'm not against development, but when I'm directly affected and my property tax is affected, I object to that. So.
Thank you.
Again, Jennifer Hart. And I know it's been said, but when they talked about the aesthetic value, you know, for the drive-bys, you know, the public isn't going to have much of an effect, and that's why it's okay to be doing this. Well, the public isn't, because it is, again, a residential area. And all of the rest of these are done in industrial areas where there is a lot of public view. I mean, to get to this area, you really have to go far out of your way. It's a nice little tucked-in area. So I just don't think that's fair. It's not fair to the people who bought a home in that area, spent a lot of money because they were in that area, to have that view now. It's just not fair.
I don't think the laws at the time were made to take that into consideration, because like I said, they're not put in residential neighborhoods. 99.9% of these solar farms are in commercial settings. At least on one side. You might have a neighbor on one side, but you've got a commercial setting on the other. And that's not the case here. It's specifically residential all the way around.
I mean, if that area wanted to have, you know, let's all invest together and put a farm in here, and everybody agreed, that's awesome. It's fantastic, but that's not the case. Thank you.
Was there anyone else who wanted to make any last comments before we adjourn? Great. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you guys all coming. I appreciate the really thoughtful comments. And thank you.
I don't know.